Hello, everybody, and welcome to ImageCon. Welcome to the last session of the day, which I promise you will be a fitting, punchy closing for an amazing first day here at ImageCon. So, what better way to close than to talk about the magical union of sights and sound? I am thrilled to welcome our partners and friends from two of the biggest mavens in the visual and audio industry, Paul Foster from Getty Images and Aaron Leo from Dolby Laboratories. Paul is the Senior Director of Creative Imagery at Getty. Paul's role is pivotal for prioritizing all Getty Images, iStock videos, and imagery sourcing. Paul works with the data and analysis and the imagery teams to make sure that to make visual sense of the data, understand the customer content needs, and make sure that all of that knowledge is converted into workable briefs for the contributors. And Paul also works with the creative leadership team to set the content strategy for Getty Images and iStock videos. Prior to this role, Paul led a global team of award-winning art directors in New York, London, Hong Kong, and Tokyo. Thank you so much, Paul, for joining us. It's such a pleasure to have you.
Hello. Thank you for inviting me.
We also have with us Aaron Leo, Vice President of Developer Experience at Dolby. Aaron oversees the developer efforts for both Dolby.io and the Dolby Game Developer Relations. Prior to Dolby, Aaron led developer marketing for Amazon Web Services and has done similar roles at DocuSign, Microsoft, and BitTorrent. Aaron taught computer science at UC Berkeley for a number of years and also worked as an intelligence officer with the United States government. He has lived and worked all over the world, but is a proud Bay Area native who currently splits his time between Bay Area, and San Francisco, and Orange County. Aaron loves cars, black and white film photography, and exploring new places with his partner and their Dashon. Thank you so much, Aaron, for joining us. It's such a pleasure to have you.
Thanks for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Awesome. All right. For our viewers, we do have a Q&A bar towards the right end of the screen, so where you can type your questions. So we will be having a Q&A towards the end. If you have questions for a specific person, please call out their name. If not, we'll direct the question to both of our speakers. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first question has to be about this thing that we're all experiencing in the last 2 years, COVID life. So the past 2 years have definitely seen the digital landscape change completely. And we could say that COVID accelerated several transformative elements in digital media. So I'm curious to hear from both of you about what surprised you the most about the growth in digital. Let's start with Paul.
Sure. I think it's just the sheer scale of the growth in video and quite how much consumers like video as a tool for engagement. And so therefore, for us, it's the central role video is already playing in brand communications across social channels. I mean, the stats, we've all read them, but things like, 87% of business day video increases traffic to their site. A similar percent also use video for their number one as their number one marketing tool. Video accounts for 82% of all internet traffic. These stats are just amazing, and how 96% of consumers increased their video consumption last year. And for me, sort of personally within my role, an interesting sort of development that surprised me was how production companies, who were effectively, they're a really important customer segment for us, who were effectively grounded during COVID and unable to produce, original footage, could effectively use stock footage to make really compelling programming, when they were unable to make their own and weave some really engaging stuff together out of pre-shot video.
Awesome. Aaron, I would love to hear your thoughts as well.
I'm going to sort of echo Paul a little bit here. I'm just blown away by the sheer volume of digital media that's being generated. What's fascinating to me is at the start of the pandemic, how many people decide to turn on a camera, turn on a microphone, and just start recording this. It's going to be vlogs, it's going to be cooking videos, unboxing videos, podcasts. We've probably all consumed a few of any of those things. I read this incredible stat. If you guys are familiar with the creator site Patreon, in March of 2020, Patreon, just as the world started closing its doors, if you guys remember, about a year and a half ago, Patreon reported that it onboarded 30,000 new creators. 30,000. So that's 30,000 people making the types of content that we just talked about. And I'm just kind of blown away by just that's a staggering amount of content. In kind, I think as consumers, we start consuming a ton of content too. So if we think about how we've been consuming this explosion in media, that's really fascinating to me too. It's unnaturally natural these days how much time we spend in front of a screen, or some of us do at least. It's more than ever before for a lot of folks. The way that we work, or the way that some of us works nowadays, is just pretty abnormal. If we were to go into the office, we'd walk between meetings. We'd visit the cafe. I'd play hooky and I'd go walk around the block and get some fresh air or something like that. And these days, we just spend this inordinate amount of time right in front of the screen all day long. And the way folks are coping is really interesting, right? They're watching a video on Twitch on a second screen while they do their work. They have their headphones on. They're listening to a podcast between meetings. Even before the pandemic, we saw this trend for folks having a second screen, whether it be a tablet, mobile device, just a second monitor. And I think that became even more prevalent during the pandemic, right? Folks started investing in additional monitors. They started setting up their home offices in a way that became more conducive to the way that they worked. And so I just find it incredible how we've adapted. We've created more content. We've also found ways to consume more of that content.
That also reminds me, Aaron, you saying that the other thing that surprised me and shocked me in a really positive way was how our contributor base were able to create content during lockdown. So it's not only that people's consumption of video has increased, but the people's innovation in finding ways to create content.
Absolutely. I mean, I am a mom of teenage boy and an almost teenage boy, so I kind of see that trend, so strong and kind of proliferated, especially during these times, right, where the kids could not go out and play, right? So they didn't have some of those options there. So absolutely. So thank you so much for that. Now, my second question, actually, Paul, you touched on this when in the last question. I do want to dive a little deeper into that when you mentioned some of the statistics on the video usage, right? So we all agree, and I think even from a common man standpoint, we can see that video has exponentially exploded in the last few years, and more so in the last 2 years, right? Driven by kind of the shifts in the market. So we just launched our state of visual media, and we validated some of those things in a quantifiable way. And we actually saw that the usage almost doubled in just the past year alone. Video almost doubled. So my question to you is, has that caused any shift in the way you approach things at Getty, in enabling creative needs for both video and images? How is this shift really playing out for your customers? Are you seeing this increase in video, which you kind of mentioned? So I'm assuming you are. And my question to you is, ultimately, do you also see videos overtake images as the most common form of visual content? And Aaron, please feel free to jump in as well with your thoughts. But go ahead, Paul.
Yes, so the first part of that question, how is Getty Images adjusting its approach to handle the creative needs for both images and videos? I'll take that in two parts, really, because it's about customers for us and also about our contributors. So from the customer perspective, we've launched a video subscription. We've launched a really neat video editor tool on our iStock platform to help customers who are not as it were, professional editors. It allows them to build videos and edit videos. And we're constantly looking at ways to better serve customers stills and video relating to the same shoot, for instance. But in terms of contributors, is sort of where I sit is more effective contributor briefing to create the content customers need. I think that's been a huge part of our efforts in the last few years to capitalize on this growth. Really, I mean, we've got a whole new team of data scientists that are helping us understand what subject matter is in the greatest demand, and what's the biggest opportunity for us. What are customers wanting? And they're doing that in a far more scientific and rigorous way than we've perhaps ever been able to do it before. That intelligence informs how our creative teams brief our exclusive contributors, guiding our key videographers one-to-one, or putting out many more crowd briefs that are video first. A lot of our briefing is really focused on video first. I mean, we call this sort of process data-driven briefs, and it very much is focused on video. Your second part of your question was, are we seeing the same increase for demand for video, and do we think video will ultimately overtake images as the most common form of visual content? Well, both are increasing, but we are seeing a much bigger increase in demand for video than for stills. It's our fastest growing product, and we're constantly thinking about more ways to productize video. I mean, this trend did exist many years prior to the pandemic, but as you said in the intro, the pandemic has kind of amplified and accelerated some of these trends, not just because of the consumption of video has gone up, but obviously the advertising around the video that people are consuming itself needs to have content and video content. So, as I said, when we read stats like 87% of businesses are using video as their number one marketing tool, then I think it's likely to become dominant. Personally, I'm not sure video will ever overtake stills as in all cases, because in many cases I still feel the power of a still image is still unrivaled. But I do think it's going to become dominant, especially in some applications, like especially online.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. So the next question is for you, Aaron. So we're going to talk about one of the most important aspects of this visual experience, which is audio, for obvious reasons. There is no question that audio is a key piece of any kind of visual storytelling, right? And whether it be online or offline. Now, we see that the technology landscape itself, has definitely expanded the possibilities and also increased the capabilities, right, of powerful audio. And as you can see in this new iPhone that just came out, you see a constant kind of improvement in the possibilities, across video and audio and image. And that said, I do know that audio still there's still a barrier for some companies as they roll out the new digital channels, especially in e-commerce and travel. Now, what's Dolby doing to bring audio to these digital media channels?
Oh, thanks for the question. I love a good opportunity to talk about what we're building. So with Dolby.io, I would say this is partially, if not somewhat driven by this explosion in media that we were just talking about. I think Dolby saw this great opportunity to be a part of that, and thus was born Dolby.io. So with I.O., I like to say that we're taking more than 5 decades of research and innovation around sight and sound, the Dolby magic, if I may, right? And we're making it available to developers via easy-to-use self-service APIs. We're doing this really to raise the bar for fidelity, right? So as we consume more and more of this media, I don't think I'm going out on a limb when I say that many of us have watched a video, listened to a podcast, been on a virtual meeting where the quality just kind of left us wanting, right? Maybe you cut out a little bit. Maybe you heard only every third word that I was saying. Maybe my video meant that you couldn't tell if I was smiling or if I was grimacing at you, right? And that's an experience that's jarring. That's an experience that we just expect more from these days, right? Especially as we consume more and more of this media. So my mission at Dolby is really, we're trying to raise the bar for fidelity. Again, we have more bandwidth than ever these days for content. We have big pipes to stream 4K content live. We've got 14 terabyte hard drives in the wild to store all of your media. We've got more compute power in the cloud than ever for transcode, things like that. And again, I'm just going to mention that the bar is higher. The bar is higher for if you go into a theater and you watch a movie, if you watch user-generated content on YouTube, on TikTok, or on one of your favorite sites, and you see that you hear an ambulance going by, you hear that puppy barking in the background, you just you think to yourself like, oh man, like it's just, I think our tolerance for it, or our expectations perhaps, are just greater these days. So I think this is, I think all of this is incredible. I think that what we're doing to try and raise the bar for that is incredible too, because not long ago, having great audio, as you're talking about, was really hard. It was really tough. It required an investment, or I'm just going to say having great media in general, perhaps, right? So it required this investment in expensive camera bodies, lenses. You needed a microphone. If you want to be a professional podcaster, I'd argue that you at some point considered having like sound isolation enclosures, right? With some of our first audio offerings from Dolby.io, we're making it easier. We're making it so that cleaner and better sounding audio is just an API call away. So easier, essentially. I'll give you an example. One of our customers is a company called See It Now, based in the UK. And they build an app so that auto technicians working on your vehicle can create videos of repair in progress. So if I bring my vehicle in, if I tell my brakes are squeaking, they can shoot a video, show me that, hey, looks like your brake pads are completely worn, looks like your rotors are showing some lip, and they can do this all from their device. And more importantly, if you've ever been to a mechanic's bay, you know it's kind of noisy, right? You've got your impact wrenches, you've got cars honking in the background, you've got a bunch of other cars running in the background. It's a noisy environment. With Dolby.io, they've created this app that helps clean up the audio, that makes it so that my mechanic who's explaining what's happening to me is intelligible. I can hear him. I can make out what he's saying. And I think that's incredible, right? Because that exact same workflow without automation will be quite a lift. He'd shoot this video. He'd go and give it to maybe an audio engineer or someone that works on their media. They'd have to run it through a couple of filters, clean up some of the media. It could take hours. And now we're doing it. We're doing it live, and we're doing it in a way so that they don't have to do that. We're raising that bar for fidelity.
This is awesome. So, one thing that you mentioned really, got my attention. So you said that the bar has been raised, right? So I think that is so much true. And I think it happened so gradually that I think people may or may not have been paying attention to it. So, a few years ago when all of this media started, it was, there were a few that were kind of early adopters and really focusing on media first experiences where quality mattered and all of this kind of unified experience mattered. And then many were doing it as more of a transactional type of thing, right? Where it's another way of communicating, right? If you have like written and then you have this. And I guess as the quality of just everything started to rise, people start to now expect that higher quality as the norm, right? And something that's not at that quality creates a jarring experience. And even for the not very technically kind of trained, right? Like many years ago, an lower quality audio may not have bothered many of us, right? But now it is very jarring when you see a video with a lot of full high quality audio and video, then you see another experience that's not, it stands out. So absolutely I think it is just we're all trained trained with much higher quality these days, and so it's not, the high quality is the kind of the base that's expected. So thank you so much for that thought. Next question is to Paul. This is actually my favorite topic. Given that as I mentioned, I do have teenage boys, and this generation actually is living that life of user-generated content, right? That's kind of such a big part of their lives. So for me, it's such a fascinating thing. So we're seeing so many companies rely on user-generated content, or what we call UGC, as a way of engaging and connecting with their communities. So what is Getty's philosophy on UGC? and how is the company thinking about the impact of UGC?
Yeah, great question. I mean, we've got a tradition of embracing disruption from the crowd, if you like. If you talk about user-generated content or crowd disruption, we partnered with Flickr a long while ago, and our acquisition of iStock many years ago, and it continues that disruption alongside the recent acquisition of Unsplash. And in my sort of career, I've seen, an era where commercial stock was once the preserve of a small elite group, if you like, of professional advertising photographers or videographers. But it's always been part of our philosophy to proactively seek out new sources of content, new communities of creators, which, you could call UGC. And that's because, customer demand for imagery depicting real people, real bodies, real interactions, real situations continues to increase. So, our philosophy has always been one to seek out those new creators. And as Aaron was saying earlier, technology has improved. It used to be the preserve of people that understood or could actually afford the technology to capture, especially video. And now that technology, I always think of, I always misquote it, but I think it was a Chris Anderson quote, never underestimate the power of a million amateurs with keys to the factory. And that's really played out in our industry, in my industry, in our company. And I think, working with creators in what you could call UGC communities allows us to extend our reach and tell more stories and more realistic stories. Especially, it gives us an opportunity to reach communities of creators that perhaps have not contributed to stock in the past. I think, the important development as well as I should mention is, it's not just in the sort of creative stock sphere. It's not amateurs in a sense. That's why I'm sometimes uncomfortable with the term UGC. It's not easy to bucket people into professionals, prosumers, and weekend hobbyists. There's talent everywhere, and I think what we're moving towards is a world where perhaps in addition to representing the entire portfolio of a professional creative, we can very quickly bring perhaps just one image or one clip from one individual to our site and make it available to license because it's serendipitous, because it's highly relevant. It might be a highly relevant shot for one of our clients to use. And I think that's the difference that we've seen, and that's our philosophy, is to try and embrace that.
Awesome. So, I love what you said about how, this creative creating used to be restricted to a few that could either afford the technology or were technically savvy. So there were those barriers between creativity and creating content, right? Like turning that into content. And I think with the technology advances and now with just automation and everything, we've removed many of those barriers, and so now there is a lot more of creativity. It's just kind of opened the floodgates to creativity. So love that. Thank you so much for that thought. All right, so the next question goes to you, Aaron. And again, as I mentioned, Paul, feel free to jump in, as you see, whenever you have a thought to share. So we had the privilege of working recently with Dolby on a hackathon. And this was a kind of a new territory for some of the developers. So what can developers expect in terms of support when managing media in general, but also audio specifically on their own?
So first and foremost, thanks for partnering with us on a hackathon. That's always super exciting. Those are some of my favorite events. The thing that has always drawn me to software development, and more recently like APIs and API first or developer first, developer advocacy in general, is this sort of notion of democratization of technology, right? Paul sort of hit on this a little bit in his last answer. It's that developers have access to tools and technologies that just allow them to build better, right? Allowed them to sort of build the experiences that perhaps once upon a time were gated off to other folks. So I'm enamored with the tools and the capabilities we have as software developers today, specifically. So if we can take a quick time machine trip down memory lane, and if you'll humor me with just sort of this mental exercise, if let's say 15 years ago, Paul and I wanted to build, we want to strike out on our own. We want to start our own startup. Let's say we want to build, I don't know, like a dating app for dachshund owners. Yeah. Because I hear those are all the rage these days. This was a huge lift, right? If we want to build an SMS so that our users can message each other, that was really difficult. If we wanted to build in live video chat so that when two people connected, they could share the majestic barking of their dogs live in real time, that was really, really hard. If we wanted to do something unthinkable, like charge for a subscription service and accept a credit card, oh, that was like nigh impossible back then, right? And today it's different. It's in today's day and age, Paul and I can go and grab different APIs to do these things. We can grab an API for telephony. We can grab an API for real-time video, and then we can go and use an API and accept credit card payments. And it's very easy. It allows Paul and I to focus on innovation, creativity, on our differentiation, right? And versus just how do we do these foundational things like billing? And I think that's really magical. I think that for us, like the next big frontier is going to be low code, no code, right? So further removing another gate, allowing people to do more with less, allowing people to sort of unleash their creativity, to be thoughtful and to be innovative, to create experiences that are different for folks without having to worry about the lift, which is like, how do I create clean audio, as an example, right? One of our customers is Squadcast, and they're a great example of this, right? So Squadcast is using our API to make it really, really easy for podcasters, which are, I love how many new podcasts are popping up every single day. My latest fascination is kind of listening to these true crime podcasts with my partner. Squadcast is letting podcasters focus on their content. They're letting them focus on sort of the stories that they want to tell, rather than how do I get the right microphone, how do I get the right studio, or how do I technologically enable myself to tell these stories, right? So they've got this fantastic all-in-one platform where a creator can do everything from capture that crystal clear audio that we're talking about, to correct audio sync issues, back up their content to cloud storage. All of this without ever having to write a single line of code. And they, in addition, they don't need high-end audio recording equipment either if they don't want, right? And that, I don't know, that feels like the future, doesn't it? To me, that's amazing.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I mean, it is magical. I agree with you that all of these, there's no more technological barriers, right? To actually, you can focus on your creativity versus having to take care of these operational kind of details. So love that. And you have perfectly segued into our next question, which is addressed to both of you. So if you have a crystal ball into the future, what do you see as the kind of the blended world of audio and imagery go in the next 5 years? Maybe we can start with Aaron first.
I will just kind of piggyback on what I was saying. Paul sort of hit on this as well, and I really love the way he put it. I think that we're going to continue to see that line between, do I dare say, UGC and like professional, prosumer, whatever content, just kind of blurring more and more, right? I see everything on YouTube, from how-to videos on how to change the oil in a car to like mini documentaries that just look fantastic. They look absolutely incredible. And a lot of them are shot on mobile devices, like a phone, right? And I think that's incredible. I think that's stunning. I love the evolution of storytelling. I love how podcasters are evolving the way podcasts look. I like that increasingly there's a live component, like a YouTube pairing or like a video pairing to like a podcast. And I think we're gonna continue to see sort of digital storytelling evolve over time. Another big area for me is gaming, as we watch kind of like AR and VR sort of come more into the mainstream. I think sort of overlaying visual imagery with audio is going to be, I don't know. I'm very interested and curious to see how that's going to go.
Awesome. Paul, how about you?
Yeah, I think, again, I'll take it in two parts, thinking about it through the perspective of customers and the consumers of the content or the users of the content, and then from the perspective of the creators. And I think, as we've been saying, it's this theme of it becoming increasingly easy for anyone to utilize pre-existing imagery, video, and audio, mix it with their own, and create really compelling visual content. Whether that's to promote products and services or engage audiences. And again, from the creator perspective, that same technology will make it easier to create content. And as we said, in my world, one of the biggest bars to entry for video particularly was people feeling that they don't have the relevant equipment or the skills, particularly to edit it, or understand, or the time to learn the editing software. So I think we're going to see increasing simplification of that. We're already seeing it, and this is a great thing. It puts creativity in the hands of more and more people, and we'll start to see more content created from demographics currently underrepresented, particularly in commercial visuals. And one last thing, which I'm fascinated to see, because I'm already seeing the influence of that on photos, but the influence of AI and synthetic clip generation and getting those tools in the hands of creators.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Paul. I was kind of thinking, how could I do a session without talking about AR, VR, and AI? And I'm glad that both of you covered that. But we have come to the end of this session. With that, I will say I learned a lot from both of you. I really enjoyed the conversation. I hope you did too. So thank you so much, Aaron and Paul, for joining us today. Thank you so much for our attendees for spending your time with us today. We have some great talks lined up for you tomorrow. So please don't forget to attend. See you all tomorrow. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.